I'm Megan Skidmore, and welcome to the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts on a faith journey and all aspects of life. Join me as I bring this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I firmly believe we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with asking questions and allowing doubts. When we are more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. Hopeful Spaces is a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. It's a free monthly parent, ally, or caregiver support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. Email chc@dallashopecharities.org for more info. First Friday's free coaching, a confidential group to bring all the questions, vent frustrations, share fears, express doubts. Navigating a new and uncertain reality is hard enough. Let's remove the worry of judgment from others. In this group, I will help you help yourself so that you can be there for your child, family, loved ones, and for you too. Click the link in the show notes to sign up. You must complete the agreement. Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm so happy to have Allison Dayton here with me. I have waited to have Allison come on for some time, and I'm so excited. I know you are so busy. I'm just thrilled that you could find a little window of time in your schedule and fit this in. So thank you so much and welcome.
Of course, I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, especially I know you're going out of town tomorrow for a fun vacation, and so this is especially meaningful.
This is my last thing to check off, and then I'm on vacation right after this. So
and then you're off grid.
Ready to go. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Allison, I'll give you the time to introduce yourself, but for those who do not know, Allison is the founder of the Lift and Love organization, nonprofit organization, and I'm going to, of course, give you some time to share with our listeners what that is. For those who don't know, my podcast reaches those of all faith backgrounds. And so some will be of the LDS faith origin, some will be of another faith origin. And that is what I am aiming for. I always like to give my guests a chance to introduce themselves and just share with us your origin story. That really, one of the things I love about doing this podcast is I'm a storyteller. I'm giving folks a platform to share their stories, their faith stories, because they're also unique, they're also individual, and one isn't more right or better or the only way, right? They're all unique and beautiful, and I love that, and I've learned so much. So I'm really excited to get to know maybe a little bit more of yours. I know this is a common thing for you to share and speak publicly, but maybe we'll find a little bit out that you haven't shared before.
I hope so. I hope I have something interesting and new to share. Because it's such a good topic, and it really is sort of the basis of what I do.
That's wonderful. So I want to turn the time over to you. Share with us about your family, where you're from, where you grew up. I don't ever like to assume that someone's faith that they were born into is the same as what they're practicing now. Just, give us a little briefing on that.
So
all the things.
Great. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I was born in the Bay Area, Palo Alto, California. School took my dad and mom down there. And I was the fourth of 5 children. I was the last one there. And we moved to Salt Lake when I was a little girl, a baby. Oh. And we've lived here ever since. And it's really kind of an interesting story because my parents went to church with like really great minds, with like Eugene, England. My dad hadn't been a member. Wow. Yeah, like really cool stuff. He was in a bishopric with them. And my dad he'd been baptized, but was never taken to church. His parents really didn't do that. Okay. And then he married my mom, who had grown up in the church in Salt Lake City. And about a year into their marriage, they were like, hey, let's maybe go back to church. So they started going back and just had these really amazing people in the ward, including Elder Worthland and
Mhm.
just some really amazing people that really activated my dad. And my mom said that he just thought they were such amazing men. He wanted to be like them, and they were so loving. And that's really what his conversion was. I mean, we can be baptized into the church, but we all have to be converted, right? So that
Sure.
was my dad's.
Mhm.
Shortly after I was born, they moved to Salt Lake. And just so you know, like I was born a member. Every single one of my ancestors is what came over in the pioneer migration.
Wow.
And there's polygamy in every single family line on
On
my
both
side.
sides. On both sides.
So true believing, right?
Yeah.
Like they gave up everything. They came. Some of them gave up their lives to just realize this, that LDS religion, to be members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I grew up in Salt Lake. When I was 14, I had, like I think I said, I have five, there's five of us, five kids in our family.
Yeah.
And when I was about 14, I realized my brother was gay. And the words came to my head, Preston is gay. So
Okay.
Preston's 9 years older than I am. And he was my favorite. And he was so sweet to me. And, he was already in college by the time I was really paying attention to anything.
Okay.
But I was really close to him. So Preston told my parents he was gay in 1973, which was a long time ago and not a
Mhm.
great time to be gay. The pediatrician in Salt Lake suggested the treatment of the day was shock therapy, and it was particularly ugly. My brother endured shock therapy as a 14-year-old.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
I did not know
and
that story.
Yeah, yeah. My mom, she remembered right before in her last year, she kept saying, I can't believe I drove him there. Like, we just didn't know. It was not a great time. The traditional thought was that it was, that this was just something that needed to be shocked out of somebody. So he
Oh,
really tried. I mean, he was such a faithful guy, went on a mission, loved the gospel. But when he came home from his mission, he just realized, like, this is who I am. And my parents did too. And he had his name taken off the rolls of the church to he thought it might alleviate some of the pain that he was feeling, but it never did. And he really, really tried. He would come back to church. He would try. But as we went through like Proposition 8 and other things like that, he became more and more hurt. And in 2017, I believe,
yeah.
he ended his life. He wrote a note just saying he couldn't do it anymore. And it was a shock, and sort of not a shock because he was in so much pain. But it really kind of changed everything for me. The way I kind of saw, unfortunately, I didn't see how much pain he was in until it was too late. And when Preston died, I had a son who had just finished his junior year in high school, and we had been pretty sure he was gay. There were enough signs, and we'd had conversations and whatnot, but he hadn't really come out to himself and to us. So I had this situation with my brother and how to work through that. Um,
Hmm.
and then I had this son who I just did not want to grow up with this pain and kind of this disconnection from the church, disconnection from himself. I mean, just watching Preston was painful. And one of the things I learned with Preston that really holds me still is that he did not want to leave the church. He really did believe, and I think till the end he believed most of
Hmm.
what we teach in the church.
Hmm.
And I remember telling a friend after his suicide that we've got to stop divorcing LGBTQ people from the church.
Wise.
This,
That's really
yeah,
good.
well, like this is our native language. The way and I would say that for any religion, the way we grow up and understand God and understand ourselves with God, it's just part of our DNA.
It really is.
yeah, and to have to walk away from it, to have to walk away from it
Mm.
is, I mean, I watched it tear my brother apart.
Yeah, it'd be like
And
having to walk away from your own family, your flesh and blood,
yeah,
really.
yeah. And just like, just being turned out like that is
Yeah.
just so painful. So that's sort of where I've always gone. Like, that's where I've sort of always worked from, is that these these kids, these LGBTQ people are part of our church. They're part of our, in the LDS church, we call each other brother and sister, or saints, or
Uh-huh.
members, and we're all part of that. And to have
Yeah.
to leave. So knowing that, I had parents who were really good with Preston, after they sort of stopped trying to change him when he was young. They just really embraced him and loved him, and tried to do the best by him. I always tell people, my parents did the hard work of trying to figure it all out, and so I don't have to.
Hmm.
And right as my son came out the next year, after his senior year in high school, I just thought, I gotta help parents. I gotta
Yeah.
help moms do this. And because you have to take care of your kids.
Your parents were in such a pivotal period of
Hmm.
time navigating this because there was so much still unknown at that time that we now
Hmm.
know and understand. And I love what you said. Your parents did so much of the hard work. I've heard it said before, our parents' ceiling becomes our floor. And so we have the
Yeah.
opportunity to raise all of humanity, raise that vibration, that understanding, that knowing for all. That
Right.
opportunity is there. And as you were telling us how Preston took his name off the rolls, I believe at the time there weren't really a whole lot of other options for members of the church.
No,
Like,
no.
and so that was
And
kind of,
more,
he was kind of
yeah.
in a, rock stuck in a hard place.
Right. Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think, he had a therapist, and I think they had decided that this would be better for him, but it wasn't, because, I feel like there was this tore out part of him, and he couldn't replace it. And then our whole family culture and everything is around Mormonism, and we've got these pioneer ancestors who he loved. He was our genealogist, actually, all the way, even after he had left. But I just think that feeling of, and even though he did it himself, he had already kind of felt like he didn't belong in the church for so long that the excommunication thing probably felt like it would help. But the trouble is he wanted to be in.
That's powerful.
Uh,
That's really
yeah, and
powerful. And I think that's the truth for many of our LGBTQ siblings.
yeah, well, and we did gather conference last year, and the overall feeling from most people was like, I want to be here.
Exactly.
So we kind of think LGBTQ people don't want to be in religion, and that's actually not true. More than 50% of LGBTQ people are
Mhm.
religious, meaning and not just religious, but go to church.
Or
So,
spiritual. If they haven't yet found a religious home, they are spiritual
yeah.
beings.
Well, yes, but they actually like, and I don't know what the percentage of just those who say they're spiritual, but it's over 50% for religious,
Hmm.
which is pretty good in this day and age.
Hmm.
Um, so that's been just one of my like anchors.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people will say, oh, well, you just have to get people away from religion, from conservative religion, and they'll be fine. And that isn't really the truth.
So
It
this sounds
isn't.
like to me, I have found both in my own journey and with the guests that I've had on, often it is a pretty significant life event that
Yeah.
creates this it's not a fork in the road, but it creates an opportunity where you take a pivot, maybe an unexpected, your journey shifts in a way that maybe you
Hmm.
weren't anticipating that it would. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is unanticipated. And it does bring a lot of unknown, a lot of
Yeah.
uncertainty, but yet you feel called to move in that direction of this pivot in your journey.
Hmm.
It sounds like this experience with your brother was a huge, a monumental moment in your journey, in your story that had that
Yeah.
effect on you?
For sure, for sure. I'd been working, I was a jewelry designer for 15 years, and before that I'd done advertising, and I hadn't been working for a couple of years because my boys were getting through high school and they were having some hard times. So I was home a lot and I kept thinking, gosh, I need to do something. I feel like there's something meant that I'm meant to do. In fact, I told a friend, and one day when I was having such a hard time in this, she said, well, you told me that you knew you had something. And I guess I told her that it was big and that it was heavy, but I just didn't know what it was then. So here I am. I started Lift in Love as an Instagram account to kind of help people be more kind and loving and supportive of LGBTQ people. Right away, I realized that moms needed help raising their children. The
So give us a
moms.
little bit of a timeline. This was right around 2020,
So
2019.
yes, Preston passed away in 2017.
Yes.
Jake came out in 18, and he was
Okay.
in early night 2019. I just the boys. Jake brought a bunch of kids up from BYU
And
to go
Jake
to the
is your gay
Pride.
son.
Oh
I know
yes,
who he
sorry.
is,
Yes,
but just
sorry.
so
Okay,
it's fine. You're doing
yeah. Let
awesome.
me give it. My
Much to
son
the
Jake.
story.
I know it's because I know you that it.
Yeah,
I'm not giving you the thing.
it's
Okay,
okay.
so
I'm filling in the blanks. We're all good.
we'll start from here. So my son Jake, who is gay, he was at BYU and brought a bunch of friends up. And I was making him breakfast and talking to them and trying to get all into their personal lives, like my kids hate. And I realized that none of them were supported by parents. And it just really struck me that their moms didn't know how. My parents had been really great. Like my brother's boyfriends came on vacations, they were part of the family. It just was so natural, especially by the time I kind of
Mhm.
figured it out. And my parents were 10 years down the road on this. So I thought, I've got to do this. And I started Lift in Love with that idea to help families.
I got
And then,
chills when you said that, Allison.
yeah,
That is
I
just,
mean, that's the great thing about a calling, right? You just know what you need
yep.
to do when you
You
need to
just
do it.
know. You just
Yeah.
know.
So I started with moms. We both know Jenny Hunter
Yes.
emailed me one day, and the email just was like neon for me, like reach out. So we started doing support groups for moms.
Hmm.
And that's what we did for about a year, and couple kept working on Instagram and whatnot, and
And
just
that's
trying to
where I
get,
found you.
yeah,
Yeah. That's why I think you
early
all
on.
started right in, it was right around the pandemic or maybe just a little before.
It was a little before. It was a
Yeah.
little before, but somewhere like I think
Because
it was the
that's
fall
right
before.
when I was in the beginning of my journey. And so it was super
Yeah,
timely for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No. So we started doing that, and then we needed more support. Then we needed a mom that did trans children or gender identity children. Then we've just grown to 12 support groups a month.
Yes.
We have QPR training, which is suicide prevention training. We have
Yes.
that 2 or 3 times a month for free. And we've just launched our new website to get people help faster, like in there. So, I'm a mom of a gay kid, so I can show up and do this.
Mhm.
Look, and it'll say, my child's LGBTQ. So I can go right into this funnel and get as much information. But yeah, and now we've done a conference, we've done a couple of conferences, and
Yes.
there's a lot going on. There's a lot of need.
Yeah,
And
you all made history when you had that mother's retreat in March of
yeah,
2022.
yep,
That was the first like official gathering of some kind of moms of LGBTQ plus
sure.
kiddos
Yeah. And
that I
wasn't
ever
it
knew of.
Yeah, for sure. And wasn't it amazing?
It was that entire weekend just filled my soul to the
Yeah.
brim. It was magical being in this room with about 100 other,
Yeah. 115 of us.
and
And that was our max, or we could have kept filling it.
yes, because the space limitations of the venue, it was so rewarding and just I cannot put words to what it felt like to be there and I felt seen immediately. Others that were there could completely relate to what I was going through and had been going
Yeah.
through and were openly sharing. I mean, Yeah, that to me, actually, I went home from that and I was like, this is what Zion could
Yeah,
be like. This is Zion
totally.
to me. That's
It was
really.
it was amazing.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. It's conversations like this that have been so healing for me on this journey. There was a time when voicing the thoughts of my heart was out of the question, for sure on a public platform and probably not even over lunch, one on one. I didn't know how to create the safety I needed to feel in order to speak vulnerably and openly. Through patience and doing my work, I have figured out the 3 pillars needed to turn the volume dial up. I learned to choose how much to share, with whom, how often, and where. I am in the driver's seat, not just in sharing my faith journey, but in any aspect of my life. In my upcoming pilot hybrid group, I will teach you these 3 pillars. It's called Unlocking Your Voice. You will have the keys you need to share your heart from a grounded, safe, and confident place. It starts this fall, and for a limited time, I will email you a special offer when you get on the waiting list. Find the link in the show notes. What
You know,
about?
that's what you're talking about is really the first thing that people feel when they find lift and love,
Okay.
is like, I'm not alone. I'm
Yes.
not alone. I thought, I was harboring this in my heart and I've been in pain and I'm sad and my child's sad. And I don't think anybody else is experiencing this unless you've had somebody that's quite vocal in your ward, in your congregation, in your neighborhood, and has kind of been vocal about how they're doing it. It just feels lonely. And the same goes for LGBTQ individuals. They feel alone
It's so
and
true.
they are absolutely not alone. Probably in every, like, I'm pulling up a statistic, but let me just give you an idea. Let's see. In our the LDS church, which is just church of just over 17 million.
Mm-hmm.
If we go by the US Gallup poll of 7.6 adult, which is a really low number of
Uh-huh.
adults, in a congregation of 30 or of 300 people, you've got 23 members
Mm-hmm.
in that congregation who are, would likely be LGBTQ, which is big. It's big.
I was just having a conversation along these lines with my coach. I had lunch with my coach recently. They're members of the LDS faith. And the here's what I have learned in diving headfirst into all things LGBTQ, gender, sexuality, relationships,
Mm-hmm.
families, and all of that. Our past, our those who came before us, our histories come into play so much with this. And it's not that, quote, more people are identifying as LGBTQ plus. Those individuals have always existed. It's that there's more conversations that are happening around this. There's more safe spaces being created. There's still room to grow on that. But
Yeah.
but so I say that because I would venture to say that that number of 23 is very much on the low end. I mean,
Yeah.
learning
Well,
how we identify in our sexuality or our gender is very much a process of just the overall identity process, whether somebody
yeah,
decides they're musically inclined or dramatically inclined or athletically or whatever. This is just an area that historically there's been a lot of stigma around. People
yeah,
didn't talk about sex, right? So the door wasn't necessarily open to have
right.
that kind of exploration around this.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the Gallup numbers, I believe if it's millennials and younger, they identify closer to 25%.
And
So
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, and this number is making everybody crazy. It's scaring people to death. But just think about it. Like, you and I grew up and there were straight people, you know, a gay man, lesbian woman, there were trans people, but we barely had any, like,
They had
contact with
they had
them.
vocabulary
Yeah.
for them, but it wasn't complimentary.
Yeah. And so we had a few kind of different ways of saying, like, I'm either straight or I'm gay or I'm
Mhm.
bi, but it was, and then we just had male, female, trans. It's like when you're little and you have a box of 8 crayons, and that's how you're coloring the pictures, right?
Mhm.
Well, our kids didn't get 8 crayons, they got the 64 box.
Mhm.
And so children will
True.
identify who wouldn't have, if it was a tipping point of, I don't know, 1 to 10, and you had to be over 7% of whatever, they wouldn't identify, but our children are allowed to kind of come in and say, yeah, I don't feel all the
Mhm.
way female. I don't feel all the way male.
Right.
And they're kind of using this spectrum, but they're still identifying. And if we're saying pejorative things about LGBTQ people, they will still absorb those, even if it doesn't change who they marry or what they do in their life. They might never transition into anything other than just a little bit socially. Like they're identifying because they have the tools to use a bigger
Because
range,
they have 64 crayons instead of the
right?
8,
So their world is more colorful, literally.
literally.
And yeah, and that's just the way it is from now on, but we're having a hard time adjusting to it.
And I
So
think what makes it hard for, you said that some people have a really hard time with the 25%.
yeah,
The thing is those colors of the 64 box, they were always there.
yeah,
They were already in existence, right?
yeah, for sure. For
But
sure. I mean,
the original
yeah,
8 were what got talked about, were what got represented, were what got the recognition or quote the
sure.
approval,
But
right?
when we were growing up, so I was in high school in the mid 80s. If I had a friend who maybe personally didn't feel very feminine, felt more a little bit more masculine, maybe we
Mhm.
called her a tomboy,
Yes.
she might have identified, today as not totally female.
Yeah.
Or she may have feelings about her sexuality that wouldn't be like this or this, gay or straight.
Right.
So we have a bigger palette to choose from, and they're choosing those, and it's okay. We can
And
just ask them, what does that mean to you? How do you feel about that? You
right.
know, we
And
don't have to go full tilt like, this is going to ruin their lives, blah, blah, blah.
I think
We
that's
don't
where
need to
some
go
of
there.
the quote panic comes in because, to add to what you were saying, that person who maybe in the 80s would have been, for lack of a better word, labeled a tomboy, who
Hmm.
today might self-describe as, maybe having some feminine, some masculine. What we're really talking about are characteristics or
Hmm.
preferences or likes or dislikes that traditionally have been placed in certain boxes. These are the
Right.
feminine ones, these are the masculine ones. And people over time have made those boxes mean a lot of things on a
Yeah.
moral level, on a social level, on a relationship level. And
Yeah.
whether or not they realize it, there's that's where the stigma comes from.
Right.
Whatever it is they're telling themselves about those boxes and who qualifies to identify with the feminine box and who qualifies to identify with the masculine, when really we all have feminine energy, we all have masculine energy.
Sure. And those mixes are kind of propel us into our jobs and the way we deal with
Yeah.
people. And I mean, I've always told people like, I'm pretty aggressive. I love being in business. I'm tall. I'm like 6 feet in heels. I love to ski and I never danced. And like, I would put myself at a 7 on a scale of like 0 to Barbie, right? Like, and when you start looking at yourself on the scale of 0 to 10, most of us realize we're nowhere near 10. In fact, I
Yeah.
was in a car with a bunch of women,
0 to Barbie.
well, 3 other women, and we were heading on a ski trip. So these are really outdoorsy women, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled this out and I said, where would you land on this scale? I said, I'll go first. So I told him what I just told you. And I said,
Okay.
I think I'm at about a 7. So 2 of the other women said they were 4, and one of them said she was 2 on a
Wow.
0 to Barbie scale. And these are lovely women. But I said to them, what if you were -2? Because after 0, we get into feeling not part of your gender, right? And they admit that they had feelings like that anyway,
Mm.
about, especially at a 2, not feeling very feminine, very female. So if we all really we're all on a spectrum. We don't identify because we really never had the words, the coloring box, the crayons for it.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at it, and I think it gives us a kind of a basis to start at, like, oh yeah, like I'm not a 10,
Mm-hmm.
certainly, even though I love jewelry and makeup and
Like I know I'm not emerald, but I don't know, maybe I'm lime, maybe I'm chartreuse,
yeah, a
maybe I'm
cerulean blue.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. And
Um,
it paints us in a more beautiful way, not a scary way. It's only if we put judgment around it and say, well,
Exactly.
just that's bad.
Right.
So
And
that's part of it.
that is so true. So as you're talking, I want to introduce another theme here, and that is you're talking very openly with me right now. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
conversation that you've shared one-on-one in groups. You've spoken in front of large audiences, right? You're pretty comfortable talking about these things.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know, in the very beginning, was there a time, how did you navigate those beginning stages? And this is important because
Yeah.
these conversations happen within family situations, in all of our communities, in our family
Right.
community, in our faith communities, even in our civic communities, like our neighborhoods, like where I live. There's a lot of not just LDS folks, but there's a lot of conservative faiths that are
Yeah.
represented, and
Sure.
these issues, topics that you and I are talking about right now are happen in all of these spaces, right?
Yeah.
But somebody has to be the one to start. So share with
Yeah.
us, like how did you get into that space? From your
Well,
story with your
I'll
brother, I think you were prepared, but I want to hear kind of,
yeah. Well, actually, so I found out at about 14 and I told my friends. Everybody knew that I had a gay brother.
okay.
I was open about it. My parents didn't talk about it much, and I didn't talk about it too much because I didn't understand what it meant really, because there
Hmm.
were no other people around. And
Hmm.
we didn't identify people as gay in TV. And, we hadn't said out loud that Elton John was gay or back, Liberace, my grandparents
or
used to watch that.
or
Like,
David Bowie or
or David Bowie was
Boy
bi. We just
George
hadn't,
or
yeah, we didn't identify. Boy George is a perfect example. So, but I am as my nature, a very open person,
okay.
and I'm careful with things that don't pertain to me, but I am naturally that way, which makes this job a natural thing fit for me, right?
Okay. Yeah, it
But
does.
I thought I could teach a bunch of moms how to just stand up and speak out for your children.
Mhm.
And it hasn't turned out that way because a lot of people are uncomfortable. So I have this like 3 generation chart. And the first generation is where my brother was in the 70s. It's this idea that it's a deviance. It needs to be, he can choose it.
Mhm.
If you've got people that believe that, you can't talk to them the way I'm talking to you, because they can't get there, right? But what you can say is like, hey, don't it seems like it isn't a choice. It seems like people are really struggling.
Mhm.
Even people in not religious situations are struggling. So you move people slowly,
Yeah.
and only as far, you can only really move them one space. So if you can move them to the next
Mhm.
space, which is kind of where a lot of people are right now, in that space of, well, it's okay if they're gay or queer as long as they don't do anything about it, like that's okay. But then you can say, gosh, like what does that do to a person, and how do they relate to God if they feel like themselves are uh just not created well, right? And that they have to be fixed to be okay, but they can't be fixed until God uh until the atonement is applied, which is after death. Like that's a scary thing, and that causes
Yes.
problems, and it can cause suicidal ideation. So you can talk about it in little
Yeah.
steps. So if you're already where we are now, then you can start talking about, look, and one of the things about the third generation is that our kids are coming out younger. The millennials started coming out young. The average, when my brother's age, the average was like 26. A little not too long ago, it was the average coming out. And
Yeah.
this is just general, not in a religious community. The average was
Okay.
22, and now it's 16. So now, for the first time in history, we have children coming
Mm.
out, like my brother did, to their parents, and their parents are protective and take care of them and are like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're a perfectly normal
Mhm.
kid, and I'm going to protect you,
Yeah.
which brings up the doubt, right?
Yeah.
This is where the family, the child
Mm.
hits the religious beliefs. This is where that collides.
Yeah, you were talking about how if a parent is already set in their what they had maybe been taught at one point that this is
Yeah,
deep, this isn't okay, you have to be willing to tolerate a lot of discomfort to consider that maybe you were you were taught wrong or it was
yeah,
ill and very misinformed. There wasn't all the information present when that was
right.
taught to
Well,
you.
and that's why I like looking at it in generations, because it's not stages that people go through. Usually, unless they're in generation one, they're going to need to go kind of through a generation two quickly to get to generation three. But
Interesting.
but it's not necessarily stages. It's just kind of what your beliefs were growing up. So I was raised to know that a gay brother was creative, amazing, had a big laugh, was in pain because of the church.
Hmm.
And he shared with me enough and more like negatively, more and more angry at me. But I knew what it did to him. So yeah, it depends on where you are. And just for your listeners, moms and dads do not always agree about where they think this is.
Yes, that is very
And
true.
usually dads are further behind.
Tell me
Um,
more, tell us all more about that.
okay, so I used to tell people, you know how football is played the same way and soccer all around the world.
Hmm.
It's because men hold those rules. And this is, if it's you and me, it's like, oh, but my friend, she has a sore ankle, so she's going to do it this way. And
Hmm.
like, and that's really long. Like it's too hot outside to run that long or whatever. I think men are more rule based. Of course, this is just generalizations and
Uh,
doesn't hold for everybody, but
you're just speaking from your experience, your observation,
yeah, yeah.
your
And
family. Yeah.
yeah, and honestly, I think men fit more easily into religious, especially conservative religion.
Hmm. I
They
agree with
just
that.
fit. And as women, we have to sort of negotiate with our religion anyway, especially women of 2024, where we've likely had careers, all of
Hmm.
these kids coming behind us. I always say I'm the saddle generation. So most of the women before me didn't in conservative in our church didn't
Have
work. And
education. Uh-huh.
after, my age and after we started working, so outside of the home, so we have this we already have to sort of negotiate in like reading scripture because there's hardly any women. We have to negotiate a church that's run by mainly men.
Hmm.
So we are already flexible and already kind of understand that how it feels to not totally fit, which I think helps mothers move quickly into supporting their children.
Hmm. They
And
understand what it means to kind of
yeah,
be in the more marginalized space,
yes,
less seen space.
yes. So from the time that I started doing this to now, I've seen a real switch. And the thing is that the mother and the father will be protective of this child because we've got third generation children coming out young. And if the message at church is negative, the parents will protect that child and they will likely pull them home. The child will say, I don't want to go to
Mhm.
seminary or I don't want to go to
Mhm.
Bible study or whatever. I don't want to go to church. And they'll say, well, you can go, then you don't have to come. But
Mhm.
then you're sitting in a family focused church
Mhm.
without one child, and that starts to feel crappy. So
Yeah,
then, and if there's enough hits, that family will take that child and leave.
right.
And that's what I see more now than, growing up where I saw people push the child out. Now there's a protective layer of family around the child. The millennials and the Gen Z brothers and sisters and siblings are like, I'm not doing this.
Exactly. And
And
to speak to your generational theme, I mean, we understand a whole lot more about mental health and emotional health than previous
yeah,
generations
oh,
did.
a
And
hundred
so,
percent.
if the danger or the threat was more physically based, it would be a no-brainer. Of course, you're going to remove from the,
Right.
um,
And it often is. It often is.
it
And
can be, yes, right.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So, and I don't suggest that people ever force a child to go to church. First of all, that's a relationship with God, and they need to have that relationship on their own terms.
you want to cultivate a positive and loving, a space for them to explore and understand what
Right.
that relationship has the potential to be.
Yeah. I mean,
It
we
already is
aren't
there, but
between our children's relationship with God. Like
right,
when we're children, they're tiny, we can teach them some ways of connecting to God, and
right.
we certainly do through our religious traditions. But we can't intervene in that line. Like that's that is their line,
Mhm.
and conservative religions are often high demand religions, like the LDS Church, and
Mhm.
so they have to decide for themselves.
And there's so much beauty in you're essentially allowing them to take the paintbrush into their own hands
Yeah,
and paint their own masterpiece the way that and it's a beautiful lesson in following their heart and learning to trust themselves and learning to
make
tap into that
mistakes.
inner wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast is a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is part of the Dialogue Journal found at dialoguejournal.com. Founder Eugene England was a Mormon writer, teacher, and scholar who wrote, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue. My hope is that this podcast is an extension of that vision." Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.